We're shooting with a beautiful iQ3. She's not naked, is she? For YouTube, is she? How naked is she? Okay, all right, guys, welcome back to the round table. We are out here shooting at Cronulla Beach in Sydney, shooting with the Phase 1 iQ3 on set. I have a Profoto light over here as well that I'm using, and let's put it through its paces. See how it goes. Okay, so we're just getting to the end of the shoot. Hope you guys really enjoyed it. We'll go back to the studio and I'll talk you through my thoughts. Cheers. Welcome back to the round table, everyone. So, the Phase 1 iQ3. I've used it on quite a few shoots now. I know it pretty well. I know its limitations. I know its speed. I think it comes down to 3 different things. So there's a trifecta that's happening with a system like this, which is something like image quality, and that image quality comes with a certain type of compression to the images, which is totally different. The sensor sizes we'll have a look at later is 645, so it's 2.5 times the size of full frame. So 2.5 times the size of a professional camera, if you will. There's a lot of imaging area. Comes with a lot of other problems and compromises, but it's a different kind of system on how that you shoot it. But the first one I think is image quality. The second one is something, and that deals with compression. The second one has something to do with the speed. The speed has made me a better shooter. It's about 1.5 frames a second absolute maximum. In doing that, it creates a certain thoughtfulness when you're composing your imagery. Something to do with the EVF, something to do with the way that speed makes you slow down. My hit rate went up substantially. Whereas you're shooting on something like an A7R III, which is very, very fast and very, very good, might I add, but totally different experience because you're not thinking as much about your composition, your speed, you're not thinking about how you're essentially trusting the camera much, much more. You end up walking away with some just dazzling images on this system, which is, again, something to do with image quality and compression, but you are considering your shots more, which I think is a good thing, which would be highly contested on the internet, but I think for me it's been amazing. The third part, I think, has got something to do with the feeling of shooting it. It's a different way of composing, a different way of how you're setting it up. The autofocus is not fast. The way that you're shooting slows down, and that actually changes the way that I experience it. I feel like it's something akin to when you talk to people that shoot Leica, the rangefinder system. There's something about the way that it is to shoot with that completely changes the experience. But anyway, let's get into it. I'll pull it apart. So it's a modular system, so that you start with the XF, which is this body just here. I just had my viewfinder actually serviced, which has its own firmware in its own right. Just get this off here. So the viewfinder's completely separate. It has its own, like I said, firmware and updates in there. So there's that top piece. Place that down. And then you have the pentaprism, which is that in there, going through. And obviously the lens is mounting on the front. We'll get to that in a bit. And then you've got the sensor, which is massive. Gotta go press a button, and then you gotta lock it in, and then you unlock. There we go. All right, so there's the sensor. Look at that. See, you probably get a good look at it. It's a massive sensor, 2.5 times the size of full frame. There's where all the magic happens, and that's the digital back. And here is the XF camera body by itself. One of the things that's really dazzling about this, which I did really love, which is in conjunction with the lenses, is the leaf shutter system in conjunction with the built-in Profoto trigger. So you actually don't have to have a Profoto trigger at all if you shoot Profoto lighting, which I do. It's actually built into the system, which is super nice. And so because the Profoto trigger is built in, you have an amazing ability to, it feels freeing. Also as well, with the lenses having a leaf shutter, you have a flash sync just natively of 1600th of a second, which is well enough for pretty much everything. Even if you're shooting 2.8 outdoors, you end up being able to shoot at higher shutter speeds, which is great. So when you're actually shooting, you're actually pushing your shutter speed higher and compensating with ISO more regularly than you would be on full frame, which is very interesting, which actually leads you to have less light, which is very strange. You would actually think, it's very counterintuitive, you actually think that you would have a lot more, but constantly you're compensating to make sure, well at least I am, compensating to not get image shake. There is a couple of ways to combat it though, but it comes with sacrifices. So let's have a quick look, just on the top of here. So on top you have all of your stuff, like your shutter speed, your aperture, your ISO, and it's all touch. So you can touch it straight away. It's all done by the dials just here, which I generally use, but the thing I use the most is I drag across and there's your Profoto trigger. So you can go through, test it just over the back just here, and then turn it on, off, and you've got all of the settings just there. You can change the settings, the powers of the lights, and change it to TTL if you want to, and it automatically just works. This is amazing. Like, I know you can have like a trigger on top, but just having it in the body is just one extra thing that you don't have to worry about, which is huge. It's absolutely massive in translation when you're actually shooting. Another mode I use quite regularly, so there's different drive modes on the top of here, but the drive mode single is just what you think it's single. I never use continuous. It's pretty ridiculous to use continuous, really. But there's one called vibration delay, which that means you can compensate for any shake before the actual shot happens. So for instance, you would have noticed I wouldn't be using it on that other shoot, but when you're locking and firing, I want to take the lens cap off, when you're locking and firing like that, you go through and you go, okay, let's go down to like 500 or whatever, let's go down to like 100 or 60 and 2.8, and then the ISO, which is all on here. It's really nice. There's an ISO dial right at your fingertips, which is just makes things just so nice. Oh, so easy to use. So let's say a lock on that. See how it hesitated? It hesitated to make sure that I don't get any image shake, which is really nice. So basically you don't have to bother with worrying about that, because it won't take the shot until it knows it's safe to. I use it a lot. The thing with portraiture though is that you heard it clicked, right? So it goes click, like that. Whereas if you shoot it in the normal mode, I'll do that one more time just to show you. and click. So the second one is when it clicks. You just have to let your subject know. But if you go back over to the normal one, the normal drive mode, single, and click, beep, it's straight away. So different experience with both of those. It's much faster on single. It'll just do, it's like bang, straight away. But different. So in my experience with shooting it, like I said, that trifecta of image quality, the compression, which looks very different to every other system. I'll flash some landscape photos up on the screen. It is very different in the way that it renders. It just looks totally different, which is a real thing. I know the internet hates that, but there's a lot of misinformation out there. It is very different in terms of how it represents a subject. Especially, I think we're trained kind of similar to how on film we're trained to see like a cinematic look in theaters from cinema cameras. I think there's a certain correctness, terrible word, to the way that the images look. They just look what they're supposed to look like, and that representation doesn't seem to be able to be replicated on any other system. The larger sensor size just changes the way that it compresses the look, and I am just totally in love. It's absolutely fantastic. There's a couple of short things about it. One of the big misconceptions from going over from full frame is like I'm not going to use this for, like, basically a better way to frame this is like what would you use it for? Well, let's say that I had an e-commerce shoot and I was doing like the product shots. Well, you would use the Canon, probably the EOS R or the 5DS, because it's faster and you do not need 100 megapixels. But for the advertising images for clients, I've been using this, which is, you can be more methodical with it because you know what you're trying to get. And that gives you a look, and it gives you tremendous versatility in post, like incredible versatility in post, which is really nice. So that's essentially how I would use it. And with the art that's behind me as well, I'm actually using that to sample textures at 100 megapixels, and then overlaying that onto forms. So that's my first art project, which you can purchase my art below. There'll be a link, which is kind of cool, and support the channel. But I'm just starting to get it printed. I just went and saw the printer today and just walked through some of the details. I'm just learning how to do that, which is super cool adventure. But anyway, what I really love at the end of the day is the way that it makes you feel when you're shooting it. It just has this, it just sparked such a love for the way you shoot. And it's totally ridiculous. It is super heavy, it is super slow, but the results from being able to do that are tremendous. I am completely in love. Feel free to hit me with details and comments, or like hit in the comments below. Hit me with any questions, because it's definitely one of those things that's not going to be used for everything, but you can adapt your style to be able to use it for different things. It's quite interesting. I think what I want to do with this channel is correct some of that misinformation that's out there about medium format, because there's not any good information at all, not really. There's not a lot of sources on the internet that actually provide accurate information on what these systems are like. There's a lot of comparisons to full frame. There's just weird misinformation about how that it works. But that's a little bit about what it's like to use this system outside under lighting for an art project. So I hope that helped. I will be signing off. Thank you so much for watching the round table. We'll be back with some more interviews probably by the end of the week, which I'm excited for. Yeah, cheers.